Thank you for joining us again on another episode of the Old Ways. Sorry. Thank you for joining us again on another episode of the Commend Journey podcast. I am your host, Michael Diamond, and I am back with another amazing industry expert and guest for you to get us informed and perhaps even have a laugh or two along the way. And so, in true Commend Journey fashion, I'm going to let our guest introduce themselves. And so, guest, take it away.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. This is Chris Wilson. I'm with Hanwah Vision. I work for them today as a senior product manager, and been quite a journey in the industry, to use the term. I spent the first 10 or 15 years on the system integrator side, from everything from attacking the field all the way up to operations management, managing projects along the way. Worked for a couple of manufacturers and then have been a consultant for quite a few years, and then excited to be back on the product management side of the industry, working for manufacturers, and happy to join the Hanwha team and excited for some new things that are coming out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to talk to our fellow technology partner for Commend in Hanwha Vision. So it's great to have you here. So I think where I want to start our discussion today is about how manufacturers can sort of deploy and use strategies um, surrounding modular or scalable security solutions. And the idea being that we want to create a solution that is customizable for the end user, but also develop them in such an environment like the security industry, which is changing while we actually record this. So
Absolutely.
how do you do that?
Well, I think there's some terminology that's floating around, and I think that's the first part is that we're mincing words quite a bit, and we're using the same term to mean multiple things, and I think that creates a lot of challenge. I think we're in a space where customers are driving more demand and driving more that they've seen the likes of the Nest, the likes of Ring come to their homes, and now they want to be able to customize and pick the solutions that are going to fit for the best for their business. I think that we're in a space where we're getting more delineation between hardware and software companies moving into hardware, hardware going into software, but we still are in a space where we need both to operate. And one of the exciting things that Hanwha announced recently is the introduction of our access control products. One of those interoperability around this scalable solution, building ecosystem ready type products using industry standards like ONVIV, OSDP, leaf credentials, having an open Sunapi API that can easily be integrated and allow customers to pick the ecosystem that fits for them and then pick the hardware to solve that challenge. I think that's
Hmm.
where we really think that's the way of the future and the way things are going to go forward. And it allows customers to not be locked into one hardware solution, but yet they can pick what's best in breed and what's right for their ecosystem and their facility.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the variety within the industry as far as the ecosystems that customers have to contend with, right? So whether it's something as commonplace as a commercial environment to anything that requires something like NERC CIP requirements and the stringency therein, environments are different and they're going to change. Um, Inside those environments, we're going to see the requirement for situational awareness. And so, how do you think we improve situational awareness, and how does that enable security systems to sort of adapt dynamically in an environment, frankly, that risk shifts constantly?
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's where it's all about being able to use the resources that we have, right? Many of our customers and teams are struggling with resources, and how do we get the most out of those resources? There's a lot of concepts with like the SEPTED practice from my consulting days on just having the visual eyes on the area. And I think that's where, having things like glass windows and people that are looking out from a reception area out into the parking lot. There's a perception if you're in the parking lot that you could be watched. If you're in the reception area in the inside, you can put eyes onto those areas. And now we can also start to use technology to be able to do that. It's a force multiplier. I don't think it's a replacement for that, but I think it's a force multiplier, and it gives us ability to see more areas around the facility, and people area would, now we can start to, monitor multiple facilities, right? If we have one person at each facility, but yet they can also help to kind of cross-check each other and kind of keep eyes on and benefit each other. And the technology, the interoperability, and being able to do that if you have, say, two systems, right? If you have a one access control and video system at one property and one at the other, if there's a way to have those kind of show up in one user interface, it makes life easier for the operators. And I think that's where the technology side can really start to help, and frankly needs to improve because we're not there today and where they can go.
No, absolutely. We're not there today. And what's great about that on the product side or for manufacturers like us is it gives us that energy to innovate. But I want to go back to something you mentioned about force multiplication. I think when we talk about force multiplication in the industry, one of the things we have to talk about is how strategic partnerships work and why they're so important in the security space. Because what I have found is that the end user, they want the end reality. They don't want to hear about how the things that they've chosen don't work with one another, right? And I think what we're seeing in the market is continuing trends for technology partners to get connected and to bring down those fences that have separated us, so that way we can provide a more strategic and frankly fluid solution for the customer. What's Hanwha Vision doing right now for that?
Well, I think a lot of it ties back to having the open Sunapi API that anybody can integrate with the at the hardware level, and I think that's it's not inside of a walled garden. It's not something that you have to pick and choose, right? It's being able to have that interoperability and be able to share that so that if you love your Genetec system or you want to use a Command Intercom or whatever, that's perfectly fine. Pick what solves the problem the best for you as a customer and then bring that together into an ecosystem. And we want to be part of that as an enabler, but part of making hardware that is ecosystem ready to be able to provide that high level of interoperability. And if they want to pick and choose those pieces that fit, I highly recommend that for customers. Find the pieces that solve that problem. And many customers, to your point, they go to a restaurant, they want the plate of food that gets served at the table. They don't want to see the potatoes and the things in the back of the kitchen and how they get prepared and how they get cooked and how do we put all this together and what are we thinking to make this dish. We want the end result because that's what we're there for. And I think it's a similar experience that customers are looking for. And as they're growing and they're looking into other properties and they're acquiring other buildings, they want to be able to use what's already there, perhaps from a cost standpoint and cost saving standpoint, or this works better in that facility. Let's just leave it. How do we make these things work together and play well and keep that best in breed, but have the software and interoperability to solve that for the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of onus then on the manufacturer to make sure that their own internal staff and also their partners who work with them are properly trained. If we go back to the idea that the industry is changing second by second, moment by moment, adjusting to threats, trying to innovate, and at the same time trying to provide the customer a clear vision of what they envision the product being able to do. How do we keep our partners well trained on what our product does beyond the simple webinar classes or informational emails? What's Hanwha's vision for keeping people prepared for what they do?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it comes down to having those conversations, having in-person conversations. I think there's an element of threats that are changing, and it's partnering with these customers and these end users more and more. Most customers know the threats that they're dealing with, and you're thinking about a corporate security. They know the threats that are there and the risks that are affecting their facility, their operations. We can then be a subject matter expert in the products that we offer and then understand how to use those to solve those challenges. And I think that's where it's not just security professionals going out and saying, hey, we need to put a camera there, lock that door, put an alarm on this. It's more of what are the threats? And I think it gets into you've got to be able to ask the why. We need to understand not just maybe the answer is we need to lock that door, but why are we locking that door? What is the threat? What is the risk? And I think it's being able to have that conversation. By having the conversation, you as a manufacturer and your team are learning more about different threats and different views on things. Customers are learning about what other products might exist out there. And I think that's where we can really start to have those dialogues and conversations. And I think partnering people that maybe don't have conversations all the time, there's a lot to be learned from the other side and taking that into account.
Yeah, absolutely. So we like to use a pretty common wrap-up question here, and I like to make people think a little forward. So let's dial the clock forward. The year is 2030.
Okay.
What do you think we are speaking about? What is the main driver in the industry in 5 years?
Wow. What is the main driver in 5 years? I think we're at a space where, because of some of the technology challenges, there's even more value in the human interaction. I think there's things that are trusted and known because they're live and in front of you. And I think there's a human interaction that has to take place in order. The trust factor is starting to erode in some of these technologies that I'm already seeing, and I think the human factor will come into play. I think that from a technology standpoint, software is leaps and bounds on a daily basis, right? It's literally changing moment by moment. And I think that we're going to start doing things that we haven't even thought of yet. I think, certainly AI obviously is all around us. I think that there's a lot of things that it's going to start being an enabler for, but there's still going to be the human factor. And I think that's where the human factor playing into that is going to become even more important than maybe we're thinking about, to make sure that things are validated, they're emotionally checked, and they're understood. And we're thinking about those threats in the right way. We're thinking about the risk in the right way, and we're deploying these new software solutions and not just creating a new widget or a new fun interface.
Absolutely. Okay. I appreciate your time, Chris. That's what I've got for you. Where can people find you, connect with you if they need to learn more about Hanwha Vision?
Sure. So the easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn, Chris Wilson. So I'm on there on a regular basis. So please reach out. Would love to stay in touch and connect. And certainly I'm at all the major trade shows as things like that come up. GSX will be here before we know it, I think.
Yeah.
ISC East, ISC West. So would love to stop in, say hello, meet in person. That's that human element that I think is coming.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.